When he learned his daughter fell for the poorest kid in class, this father started following the boy home every day. But even with his car hitting 12 miles per hour, he still couldn't keep up with the running boy. He couldn't believe his eyes. Soon enough, the boy spotted him too.
Why are you following me?
You know how fast you were going?
What are you, a cop?
He told the boy that if his speedometer wasn't broken, the kid was running at 12 miles per hour, covering a mile in just 5 minutes. But the boy just shrugged it off and told the teacher to stop following him. Then he took off into the fields. What he didn't know was that his speed could not only change his own fate of poverty, but also turn this down on his luck teacher's life around. White had been a football coach at a big city high school, but during a team talk one day, a cocky player kept interrupting him. In a fit of rage, he hurled a shoe right at the kid's face. That outburst cost him his job once again. No school would touch him after that, so White packed up his whole family and headed to McFarland, the most backwater farming town in California. But once they got there, White started wondering what part of America he'd landed in. The only restaurant in town didn't even serve burgers, only served basic Mexican tacos. Right after they stepped outside, a bunch of lowriders came cruising by blasting music, catcalling his daughter. He rushed his family back to the car and got out of there, but with empty pockets. He had no choice but to stay for now. When the local principal looked at his file, he discovered White had cursed out students, gotten into a fistfight with a school board president, and been fired multiple times for violent outbursts against players. But since they were desperate for teachers, the principal decided to give him a shot.
What are the chances of it happening again?
It's not going to happen again.
Pleased to hear it. Because you're running out of options, Mr. White.
White became the school's PE teacher, but on his very first day, before he even finished taking attendance, 3 students walked right out of class. Their parents were calling them home to work the fields. The kids even mocked his name White, saying it sounded like some farmer's market. But this time, he didn't lose his temper. He was just there to collect a paycheck, save up enough, and get out. Still, compared to the big city, the people here were incredibly warm. Just 2 days after arriving, a neighbor showed up with a live hen as a gift, welcoming him to McFarland. White couldn't bring himself to kill it, so he went to the local general store to buy chicken feed. When the shop owner heard he was raising a chicken, he figured White was planning to stay. So he offered him a sapling, saying in just 5 years, it would shade his whole yard, so the sun wouldn't scorch his plants. But White turned down the offer. No way was he sticking around for 5 years. Walking out with an ice-cold Coke, he spotted some of his students guzzling water from a car wash hose.
You know, they got sodas in the store.
Water's free, White.
White asked around and found out. These kids had been there since 5 in the morning, washing cars for tips. After that, they'd spend the rest of the day working the fields. Monday through Friday, they'd be up at 4:30, barely awake, helping their parents with the harvest, before running off to school. The kids laughed and joked along the way, but the dust swirling all around them told a much bleaker story about their future. The English teacher told White that nearly everyone here came from hardworking Mexican immigrant families, farming generation after generation. The school sat right next to a prison. Once these kids finished their basic education, it was either the fields or jail. There was no third option. Even if they got into college, their families couldn't afford tens of thousands a year in tuition. She knew White wasn't going to stay, but she still urged him to take his classes seriously. Even if all he could do was leave these kids with a few good memories from high school, that would be one of the rare sweet spots in their lives. But White's heart wasn't in it, and he couldn't change things anyway. In class, he was just going through the motions. He'd tell the kids to go run laps, then sit back and eat his breakfast. That's when he noticed these kids weren't just fast. They ran lap after lap without ever getting tired. After school, White spotted a student who ran home every day. His daughter told him the boy's name was Valles. He didn't just run far, he ran incredibly fast. That's when it hit White. These kids ate massive amounts of carbs every day, giving them endless energy. The scorching California sun had built up their heat tolerance. They were born to run. The very next day, he showed the principal a flyer for California's first cross-country state championship, pitching the idea of starting a cross-country team at the school. But the principal said that was a rich school thing. They had no money, no cross-country coach. They simply couldn't afford it. But White had looked up past race times and found that Valles could easily place in the state's top 10. Plus, the state's public education system had added funding for 6 new sports programs a few years back, and cross-country was one of them. Since funding was available, the principal had nothing left to argue and told White to go for it. So White found Johnny, the fastest kid in class, and told him to round up 7 guys for the team. And to make sure Valles was one of them, Johnny quickly recruited Victor and the 3 Diaz brothers, but Valles turned him down. Still 2 guys short. White happened to see Jose, the 3rd fastest kid in class, getting chewed out by the football coach for stealing coins from a vending machine. White stepped in to bail him out, claiming it was his own change that got stuck, and he'd asked Jose to help him get it out. He even bought the kid a drink. That was member number 6. Meanwhile, Valles got into a fight with a classmate for trash-talking his sister. With an assist from the principal, the cross-country team finally had its star runner. When Victor saw that chubby Danny was on the team too, he wasn't happy about it. He thought Danny would hold them back. But the coach said Danny was the key to the whole team, because without him, his 2 brothers would quit. When they ran past the general store during practice, the shop owner couldn't believe his eyes seeing these troublemaking kids actually running with the teacher. He joked that now he'd seen it all. Seeing White slumped against the storefront, completely gassed. The owner handed him a Coke, thanking him for what he was doing for the town. The guys trained hard. Even Danny, who fell way behind the pack, never gave up halfway. He pushed through and finished, but when they stopped for water, White noticed every single pair of their shoes was falling apart. And those were the best shoes they owned. The heat eventually faded, and October brought the Palo Alto Invitational. White dug into his own pocket to buy the team matching uniforms and discounted running shoes. They said the gear looked ugly, but they were already lacing them up. The rules of cross-country are simple. First place gets 1 point, second gets 2, and so on. Only a team's top 5 finishers count. Add up their scores, and the lowest total wins. When the other teams saw the McFarland kids, they started talking trash.
Where the hell's McFarland?
Here they can't run without a cop behind them.
The boys didn't fire back. They swallowed their anger, saving it all for the course. When they couldn't outrun Valles on flat ground, 2 runners from different schools teamed up to play dirty, boxing Valles in from both sides. But one look at Valles' build and you'd know nobody was going to hold him back for long. But when they hit the hills, Valles, who'd been leading the whole time, got blown past. The entire team finished near the very back, dead last in the final standings. Danny trailed way behind as usual. But this time the coach didn't blame anyone. He took all the responsibility himself. He said it was his fault for not scouting the course beforehand. He hadn't known there was a mountain out there. He told them not to give up. Their future was so much bigger than this. But back home, White was still frustrated. Results like that weren't going to get him back to a big city job. His wife, though, didn't care how much he made. She just wanted him to spend more time with the family and reminded him not to forget their daughter's birthday cake tomorrow. Determined not to make the same mistakes, the coach kicked off grueling training sessions. Since there were no hills around, he found a crop storage facility and turned massive almond mounds into makeshift hill courses, making the team run up and down again and again. The brutal training was tough, of course, but what hurts even more is getting past right before the finish line. It's realizing after you've lost that you didn't give it everything you had. They needed to train until they loved seeing hills. The steeper, the better. When the coach called for one more lap, Valles hesitated. The coach told them to rest after finishing, but Valles didn't stop. He didn't even know what the point of all this was.
How many more do you want? 10, 20, 100? Take a break. You think you're tough, White? Well, we're tougher, all right? We're not runners, we're pickers. And we're always gonna be pickers. And every day we're gonna get up and do the same thing over and over again, just like this. So you can make us do it 100 times, 1,000 times, because guess what? It's never gonna change, all right?
When Valles tripped and fell, he pounded the ground and screamed. It was rage born from despair, a howl against the unfairness of it all. Those hills in front of him were like every obstacle in his life. He knew you had to reach the summit to see the world below, but right now he was lost in the woods at the base of the mountain. The weight of reality blocked out the sky like a canopy of branches, and he couldn't see the path forward. Broken inside, Valles quit the team. That night, White got home only to realize he'd forgotten his daughter's birthday cake. She was so upset she wouldn't eat, talk, or even look at him. So White drove into the city in the middle of the night to buy one. But on the way, he spotted someone sitting alone on an overpass. When he got closer, he realized it was Valles. His face was bruised and he looked like he was in real pain. Life had not been kind to this kid. His teenage sister ended up pregnant, putting even more strain on the family. His father, who kept the family afloat with odd jobs, lost it and started punching walls. Valles tried to stop him and caught a stray hit, since his father was the sole breadwinner. An injury to his hands meant the whole family would starve. Now White truly understood what these kids were up against. He needed to get Valles off that railing, so he told the kid about forgetting his own daughter's birthday. To get him to let his guard down, he told him a fall from this height wouldn't do the job. It'd just break his legs, and he'd never run again, becoming a real burden on his family. The moment Valles was distracted, White grabbed him and pulled him down. From that day on, White threw himself into studying everything about distance running. He got serious about coaching, because running was the one shot these kids had to take control of their own destiny. He started finding all kinds of terrain for training. Every day he'd ride alongside them on his little daughter's tiny bike, coaching them the entire way.
Johnny, why are your arms flying around everywhere?
I don't know, why you riding a Barbie bike?
Cause it's pretty?
Bet you got the matching dollhouse too, huh? Which one are you, White? Blanco Barbie?
You're not smiling, are you, Valles?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
After more weeks of training, they got their shot at a dual meet. Just 2 teams, but the opponent was highly ranked. An elite squad that figured McFarland would be an easy warm-up. They held the lead for most of the race. Their coach even mocked White on the sidelines. But the better training showed the boys stepped up big time, winning by just a single point in the final team score. For kids who'd been grinding so long, this was their first glimpse of hope. But right after that win, the 3 Diaz brothers dropped out of the team. Confused, White went to their house to find out why. He happened to arrive at dinner time, so their mother insisted he stay and eat. At the table, she kept piling food on his plate. After he was stuffed to bursting, she packed up another container of food for him to take home to his family. Overwhelmed by their hospitality, White couldn't bring up the subject. It wasn't until he was leaving that the father saw right through his visit and told him the truth. The brothers' father was a crew foreman. They had a daily harvest quota to meet. Every hour the kids spent training was an hour less in the fields, which meant less money for the family. Running was a luxury like a TV, not a necessity. So to free up their training time, White helped the brothers meet their harvest quota. That weekend at the crack of dawn, White White joined them in the fields picking crops. The brothers had been doing this since they were 10. The more ground they covered, the more their father earned. On his first day in the fields, White couldn't keep up with anyone. Halfway through his back was killing him. After finishing the day's work, they worked out a training schedule. Late harvest days meant late practice. Race days meant getting the harvest done early. And when needed, White would pitch in himself. By stepping into his students' lives, White finally earned their respect. For the first time, the boys called him Coach. When he got home, he was so wiped out, he didn't even change his clothes. He just collapsed on the bed and passed out. The help went both ways. The next day, the students' parents showed up at White's house. Making tamales to sell, they sent the kids out to wash cars, organized a fundraiser, and raised money for the cross-country team so the boys could get proper running shoes. Before long, the McFarland Cougars' Cinderella story made the local newspaper. The English teacher brought more good news. Jose, who used to be a petty thief, was like a whole new person after joining the team. In an essay he wrote, "We fly like blackbirds through the orange groves, floating on a warm wind. When we run, we own the earth. The land is ours. We speak the birds' language. Not immigrants no more. Not stupid outsiders. When we run, our spirits fly. We speak to the gods. When we run, we are the gods." The English teacher read it with tears welling in her eyes. She sincerely thanked White for everything he'd done. And White finally realized this wasn't just about padding his resume, so he could land a job at a better school. If the boys kept winning, they'd qualify for the state championship and have a real shot at college scholarships. He told the team to dream big. Think about which college you want to go to, because only with a college degree could they escape the life of a field worker and give their families a better life. When Valles told his father the news, his dad told him to drop out of school. "Farmers don't need all that education," he said. It wasn't that these people were short-sighted. It's just that without a scholarship, there was no way the family could cover tuition. At the next race, a coach slipped White a business card. Principals at other schools had started noticing what White could do, but after a whole year together with these kids, White found it hard to walk away. In this race, the boys were visibly more confident. Their opponents didn't dare underestimate them anymore. This course was nothing but mountains. White told his team, "When you're climbing, you'll be hurting, but remember, everyone else is hurting too." After countless training runs, even Danny, the slowest guy on the team, was now passing runners on the uphill. But near the finish, Valles, who'd been in first place, took a fall, costing the team precious points. They were right on the bubble for qualifying. The boys stared anxiously at the scoreboard. When the official posted McFarland in fourth place, all that hard work had paid off. McFarland had qualified for the state championship. They finally had their shot at college. On the ride home, White pulled over at a beach park. He wanted these kids who had never seen the ocean to celebrate by the sea. Too bad the entrance fee was $9, and White only had 5 on him. Luckily, a kind-hearted guard waved them right in for free. The setting sun bathed the boys in golden light, shining on faces full of hope. They plunged into the waves, celebrating their victory. In that moment, they washed away the dust of their old lives and caught their first glimpse of a different future. The road ahead was finally shining beneath their feet. White asked the shop owner to make a poster, announcing that they were heading to the California State Championship. The shop owner was over the moon. This was the first time in 25 years anyone from this little town had made it to a big-time competition. He even decided to close up shop for a day, something he never did. To make up for missing his daughter's birthday, White sent his wife and 2 daughters out early to get their hair done. Then he secretly invited a bunch of parents over to help set up a surprise birthday party. When his daughter came home, she got the surprise of her life. She put on her dress, and Valles showed up in a suit. The band started playing, and her father asked her for a dance, celebrating her coming of age as a beautiful young woman. The town's car club rolled up too, inviting the birthday girl for a ride. Once White learned this was a local tradition, he let his daughter go, but he made Valles promise to look after her no matter what. But barely a block away near the general store, an old rival caught up with the car club's leader, who'd just gotten out of prison. When White rushed over, his daughter's knees were badly scraped up. The leader got slashed. A violent street assault less than half a mile from his front door shook White to his core. The next day, he saw the owner scrubbing the sidewalk clean. White took out that coach's business card and drove to Palo Alto High in the city. The interview went perfectly. They had top-of-the-line athletic facilities, and White would be promoted to department head, the position he'd always dreamed of. He still wanted to see how his daughter felt about it. Valles happened to be there too. He confronted White, asking if he was just gonna ditch them. White was speechless.
Everyone's always gonna go for the better everything. That's why no one stays in McFarland unless they have to. There ain't nothing American dream about this place.
That night, White asked his wife if they should go. Moving meant a nice neighborhood, top schools for the girls, and a much bigger paycheck. But his wife had fallen in love with this place. For years, they'd been bouncing from city to city, following his career. But nowhere had ever felt like home the way McFarland did. She told him that night, when their daughter got hurt, it was because the boys jumped in to protect her and accidentally knocked her down in the process. People anywhere else would never do that. After much deliberation, White decided to stay for now. At the very least, he'd see these boys through to the state championship. On race day, the whole town came out waving American and state flags. As the national anthem played, White's mind flashed through every moment of their training together. For the first time, the wheels of fate were in their own hands. How far they'd go was entirely up to them now. White gathered the team for one final pep talk.
I want you to look around. Best in the state, right? Every team that's here deserves to be, including you. But they haven't got what you got. all right? They don't get up at dawn like you and go to work in the fields, right? They don't go to school all day and then go back to those same fields. That's what you do. And then you come out with me and you run 8 miles, 10 miles, and you take on even more pain. These kids don't do what you do. They can't even imagine it. When I went out in the field that day with you Diaz kids, I'll be honest with you, it was the worst day's work I ever had to do in my life. And I said to myself, whatever kind of crappy job I end up in, it'll never be as tough as that. You guys are superhuman. What you endure just to be here, to get a shot at this, the kind of privilege that someone like me takes for granted. There's nothing you can't do with that kind of strength, with that kind of heart. The kids have the biggest hearts I've ever seen. Now go run your race.
Jose, eager for a great result, sprinted out in front of everyone from the start, but going all out that early burned through his energy fast, and he started fading. Thankfully, Valias delivered. He was the first to appear at the final stretch, winning the individual title by a razor-thin margin. As the rest of the team crossed the finish line, the coach anxiously looked for Jose. He was a full minute slower than his training pace. The championship seemed out of reach. Just when the coach was losing hope, a miracle happened. Danny out of nowhere kicked into another gear, blowing past a ton of runners, and finishing as the team's crucial 5th scorer, clawing back every point Jose had lost. They might actually pull this off.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize for the delay.
It was a very close race, and we needed to be sure. But we can now announce that the first ever California State cross-country champion team is McFarland.
The boys hoisted Danny up on their shoulders. He'd done the unthinkable. The Palo Alto coach approached White one more time, asking if he wanted to make the switch. But after witnessing the incredible transformation in these boys, White made up his mind to stay. He had found his purpose right here. Over the next 14 years, McFarland High's cross-country team won 9 state championships. Jim White remained their coach, retiring in 2003 and settling down in McFarland for good. All 7 runners from the 1987 team went to college and built solid careers. Even in their middle age, they come back every year to join practice, inspiring the next generation to change their fate. A championship trophy can't save a dying town, but 7 boys running across those dusty fields showed people who'd spent their whole lives on their knees what it felt like to stand tall. Turns out when the soul stands up, it looks a lot like running.